Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome everyone to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very excited to have with me Dr. Alessandra Wall. Let me tell you about Dr. Alessandra. As a former psychologist and executive coach, Alessandra has spent the last 2 decades helping women access and thrive in senior leadership roles in male-dominated industries. She is not only interested in empowering individuals to become the best version of themselves, but she also specializes in helping women cultivate confidence and authenticity as they navigate the leadership roles. One of her favorite approaches and topics is showing women leaders how to build visibility and own their own authority without guilt or being called the B word. Today, we're going to talk about transforming exceptional women into leaders. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Alessandra Wall. So excited for this conversation. Love what you're doing. Enjoyed hanging out at your websites and checking out all the things and that you say and that you've done. So excited about this interview.
Me too. Well, you got a big smile out of me really early on. So that's
it's always a simple question that we ask, and that is, where do you call home? Where do you live now?
Oh, that's not a simple question.
That I always get that answer now. It's like
I call home France, which is where I grew up from age 17 to 18. I didn't move to the States till I was 18, although my dad's American. I live in San Diego, and I've actually lived here.
Oh, I love San Diego.
20 years. And yet, so longer than I've lived anywhere in the world. And yet, when I say I'm going back home, I usually mean I'm going to Paris.
Yeah. For me, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania area. And I have lived here in Atlanta now longer than I lived there. I moved here when I was 29. And it's interesting. But when I say I'm going home, it's Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm. Wherever you spent those formative years.
I love Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
I do love Atlanta. So we gave just a brief intro to wet the whistle of the folks that are listening, but I'd love for you to share your journey that led you to where you are today, to the leader that you are today.
I love sharing this journey. One day I'll be able to do it succinctly, but I'll do my best. I'm going to share this because I think it's relevant. Like many adults and like many career adults, I decided what I was going to be when I grew up in my teens. And I didn't veer from that decision. I mean, I did not consider anything else once I think I got the okay from my parents on my vision for the future. Went to college, went to graduate school, got a postdoc in clinical psychology, and I started my career as a clinical psychologist, as a child clinical psychologist specifically. And then had my children, and I didn't enjoy the fun of working with children. Is part of it is in operating in a child's world. But when you operate in a child's world at work and then you operate in a child's world at home, for me, I needed a shift. So I went back to the basics, which is adult therapy, and did that for a few years. And I often share that I used to walk into work singing. I mean, I am one of those people, you either love me or hate me, because when I feel big, and I can marvel at the smallest thing. Like I'm a cheap date when it
Nice.
comes to happiness.
Nice.
Um, so I did literally would walk into work singing. I would sit in therapy sessions, and inside was this little girl who would be bouncing around. I am so lucky. I am so lucky. And I lost all of that in my mid 30s, which is really early in a career to lose all of that when you have 30
Yeah.
plus years ahead of you. So I did what everybody does when they have a midlife crisis. I became a life coach, which was like the easiest way to translate the things I loved about being a therapist and the skill set I had into a different direction that would free me of the bonds of being a therapist. Being a therapist is an extremely regulated profession.
Mm-hmm.
It's no fun. I'm at heart like your adolescent rebellious person, yet
Mm.
good girl. I don't like being told where I can see my people, how I can see them, what I need to
Mm-hmm.
document, I don't like the legal piece of things
Right.
defining my relationships need to be. But I didn't enjoy the business I built, and I burnt myself out.
Mm.
And after 4.5 years of making no money as a life coach, supporting that business with my therapy practice that I was still running while raising first
Mm.
toddlers and then, preschoolers and early elementary school children, I did burn myself out. I took 6 months off and I stopped and really asked myself, what do I want to do? What do I want to be when I grow up? What's
Mm-hmm.
this 2.3.0 version of me? And I asked myself who I loved working with and what I loved doing with them. And it came down to I was working with a lot of women who were really miserable.
Yeah.
At the time, they were miserable on the way to being successful. Today, I work with women who are already all, on paper at least, ridiculously successful.
But miserable.
So many of them are, not all of them, but many of them are, or many of them are trying to make sure they don't get there.
Oh, good.
Um, and that led to Noteworthy. And the company's name stands from our mission, which is our mission is to make sure that as many women as possible can access the highest levels of leadership and power to the point where it's no longer noteworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can think about what my career 4.0 will look like.
Awesome. I love that. That's one of the questions I had because I loved when I read your mission. I think it's so important. And, it's kind of why after I retired, I said, I don't want people to have to struggle and wait till they're 50 to discover that, you know what, you run your own show.
Mm-hmm.
You run your own show.
Love the way you put that, because that is foundational, right? Have you ever done Simon Sinek's work on what is your why, like all of that stuff? So I did it, I think soon after I came back from being burnt out. I can't remember exactly the year. And fundamentally, my why is I want to help people take ownership of their lives so that they can live without regret, which is not the same
Yeah,
thing as living without making mistakes or living without
absolutely.
looking at part of your life and saying, I would do it differently. I would do it differently is not the same thing as I totally regret. Is
Mm-hmm.
this like, oh my goodness, like I wasted an opportunity, a part of my life I should have, is different than saying, I mean, there are parts of my life even now that I would be like, I wish I had done things differently is different than I should have. I really should have.
Mm-hmm.
Can't believe like I did that. And part of that, to me, the pathway to that is ownership.
That's right,
By taking ownership of our choices and our actions,
for sure.
right? So it's exactly what you're talking about.
And it's so when we talk about empowering, but it's just such a release when I no longer cared to go break any ceilings, prove my worth. I just was. I just was me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was just me, the world just responded so positively.
Yeah.
And that's whenever I got to be recognized as a good leader, and I wasn't even trying. And I think that's what we worry so much, as you said, about being perfect. I often say perfect is boring, And the best lessons that I learned in leadership were whenever I failed.
Mm-hmm.
And those resonated with me. And, that's why I do what I do today.
It's interesting. I was having that conversation with my oldest son, who's 15.
Mm.
And he is, I don't know if your daughter went through this, but these days, at least in our school district, kids can retake tests.
Mm.
And I'd
Yeah,
remind them, I'm like, your teachers hate you. I just want you to know that, because you're not retaking a test because you got a 65 or 75 and you're trying to do better. You're retaking a test because you got a 98% and you want to get 100. I'm like, they hate you. That being said, if the system is allowing itself to be gamed, game the system, right? And we tell him this is not the choice we would make. I don't think it's a good use of your time. I don't think you need it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And we're talking about this perfectionism. It's like, well, crouching it in mediocrity. I'm like, failure is proof that you are reaching for big things.
Mm-hmm.
Failure is part of success, and all these failures are big lessons. So we're trying desperately to pull out examples for him of people he admires and go, all of these people failed, and none of them looked at their failures as signs of their worthlessness, but rather of proof that they were dreaming big enough and aiming for things, and they've learned it and they grow. It's clearly, interestingly for me, because it's not like we've taught him otherwise, a hard lesson for a 15-year-old boy to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I still see it. I have a client yesterday I was talking to who I've been asking to take her foot off the gas. My women all operate at this level of excellence, and they think they have to show up excellently, which really is perfectly in everything they do. And I try to remind them, actually, we work really strategically. This is important in leadership, to understand that some tasks, some projects require excellence, and some require you to come in and be really solid. And you say it this way, like solid work. And others require simply being good enough, not good enough, good enough. And below good enough is average, and below average is mediocre. And one of my clients was saying, because I keep on telling her not to show up excellently and everything, it's burning herself out. It's setting her up for unhappiness at work, right? Because everybody now expects her to do all the things, and she does the work of 2 or 3 people, which means nobody's hiring the extra 2 or 3 people that are needed to do what she's doing.
Right.
Right? Why would they? And she said, I really struggle with motivating myself to be mediocre. And being able even to teach somebody who's 25 years into her career, I'm like, that is not mediocrity. That is like a full standard deviation and a half above mediocrity.
So true. And, whenever you talk about failures too, a lot of the projects that I led, we wanted to break things. We wanted to understand, why did it not work? And from that, we made it better. And I think people sometimes forget that the failure is just bringing to light something in a process or a system that's not exactly the way it needs to be the best it can be. Not perfect, but the best it can be at that iteration. And as time goes on, we'll learn more to make that. And, we often tell folks that are entrepreneurs, this is your baby, but your baby has to grow. Your baby has to go and take that next stage and that next level, which means you have to let them change. And that's sometimes hard for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's really, the entrepreneurs are like a micro version of the founder experience, right? You see so many founders who are able to build something, then they outlive their top utility to the organization, and they need to bring other people in to meet the needs of a growing organization. Maybe it's a CEO or a different president. Maybe they need to step away and move into a board or advisory position. It's just really hard. I am both looking forward to and dreading the day that happens in my business.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it as a woman, if you got to that level, you think, well, if I delegate to someone else, is that saying that I can't do that? And no, it's saying you're a very smart person to understand that you are giving opportunities to uplift others to be able to show their greatness.
I guess you make a really important point, and I would say it's a point I make a lot when I have leaders who move more and more into like the higher rungs of executive leadership, and whose value suddenly moves into being strategic as opposed to operational.
Yes.
What I see is exactly what you're talking about. So my clients will say, my clients, some of them will get in the weeds with their people, with the individual contributors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because they're trying to micromanage. It's because they're so used to demonstrating their value by doing,
Mm-hmm.
that they worry that if they're not doing, A, they're letting other people down. B, other people will question why they're at the top. And there's all this anxiety about understanding suddenly, like, your brain, your ability to think, to plan, to strategize, these soft skills that have been minimized your whole career, your ability to connect with people, to make good introductions, to know who the top players are in a system and plug them in properly. These are actually essential leadership skills. And there is this transition of learning how to spend your day differently, and how at no point in anybody's career is busyness actually useful. It's rarely effective or efficient. So I hate the concept of productivity. Because productivity in today's world, it really translates into busyness. But it is especially not useful as you start leading more and more people.
Yeah. So let's kind of lean in this way a little bit. You say incredibly smart women and exceptionally accomplished women fail as leaders. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think we talked about some of it, right? And I think they're set up to fail as leaders.
Yeah.
They're different. I don't think they fail as leaders. I think they're set up to fail. So we have a world in which we keep on telling women, we want to see you in leadership positions. We keep on telling women, we're going to support you in leadership positions. But there's a double standard that's constantly being held. I was talking, I had an 11-hour day yesterday, so I was talking to a lot of people yesterday. But I was talking to another one of my noteworthy women about a job interview that didn't quite go the way she wants. And I said, I really find myself feeling very curious, and this ties into what we're talking about. We know that when female founders are interviewed by investors and VCs, the questions that they're asked are about how they will avoid failure and how they will avoid risk.
Right.
The questions that men are asked is about how they'll scale and build the businesses into even bigger successes. Now, I don't think that investors and VCs are coming in and purposefully doing that, but that is the bias when you ask questions. And I found myself wondering, I wonder if when women interview, that same bias for jobs, that same bias is there. If they're being asked about where are the gaps, where are you missing knowledge, where are the as opposed to being asked, oh, given the skill set that you do have, what's possible? And when women walk into these roles, I wonder whether they're perceived in the same lens. So I think women are set up to fail because we have all these expectations about how women should be. They should be collaborative. They should be kind. They should be soft. They should be helpful. And when I say we, I mean men and women have these expectations. So women walk into positions, and then all of us are expecting them to lean in. If you're just listening, I made a really weird face when I said that. They're expected to continue showing up the way they did, and they hold that expectation too. So they raise their hand too often. They say yes, then other people ask them to do those things. Women are often caught in the situation where they're both told that they're too assertive and not assertive enough.
Mm-hmm.
I've literally heard things come out in the same meeting about the same person from two.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure she's got what it takes to lead and to push. And in the same meeting, somebody else will say she's too assertive. So when women cut to the chase, get to the point, speak without padding their language,
Mm-hmm.
we're too assertive. And there we go to the B word, because that's what
Yeah.
happens.
Mm-hmm.
When a man does that, he's decisive, or it's just the way
That's
he
right.
talks, or he's to the point, or he's straight, or he's a straight shooter, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we don't speak that way, when we fall into these patterns of saying, I think, and using a lot of words, suddenly we're unsure, we're unclear, we're too timid, we don't have what it takes to lead. There is no real winning, which is when you say, eventually you just have to be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Those things come in. I do have to say that if you're a woman listening to this, please stay away from I think.
Yeah.
It is the kiss of death. And there are many things that you can say. First of all, if you know something, say it as a statement. And you can always catch yourself. I have been known, even on stage or in board meetings, to say things like, I think, and stop myself and I go, I'm sorry. I know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I will catch myself and point out that I. So if you know something, put it as a statement.
Yeah.
If you're making a statement, but you're not 100% sure, use expressions like, based on my experience, based on the data we have right now, based on what we know, I would hypothesize one theory I have, one hypothesis I have.
Mm-hmm.
Those words can communicate uncertainty, but especially because we're using scientific language at that point, they communicate uncertainty with far more authority.
Right.
Right. There's another expression. I have one client who says, you know,
Oh gosh.
every 3 words.
As a public speaker trainer, that's one of the things I work on the most with other people, because it is like terrible.
You know, right. Mine is so. I'm working on it.
Mine too.
I feel like I've made a lot of progress, because I used to say, I think, all the time. And that's part of being in academia. That's part of being a psychologist, right? So why are women being set up to fail? Because they're being held to 2 standards at once. So they're being held to all our stereotypical standards about
Right.
what a nice girl should be. They're being held to male standards. When women do that whole thing where we say lean in, and they don't do it with and take into account bias, they set themselves up to fail. So one of the things I talk about a lot is articulating your value. It's the importance of walking into any space and being able to clearly explain to people what you do, how good you are at it, how you want that skill to be leveraged. So what space, what kind of tasks you want those, and to really own that. But as a woman, if I walk into a room and say, I would be the best person for this job because I'm really good at building and I'm an excellent problem solver. And when you couple those 2 skills, I'm able to, and I start sharing my wins, sharing my accomplishments. All of those things might be factual. They might actually be the information that my audience needs in order to make a good decision about who leads the project. But unless you are a celebrity, people don't like hearing women say, I am woman, hear me roar. Women don't like hearing women saying, I am woman, hear me roar. So when I talk about this, and again, if you're listening instead of watching, I tend to shift to one side, cock my head and go, who does she think she is? Because that's the mental reaction that many of us have. So we're telling women, well, we know visibility is the number 1 factor associated with advancement for women. Securing sponsors is the number 1 factor associated with retention and success for senior women in leadership. So important that the World Economic Forum has made it a priority. Right. And in order to secure those sponsors, you need the visibility, right? You need people to understand what you're about, what you can do, what you need, right? Where to position you. This is really important. So they're all tied together. So if I just tell you, Vicki, you need to speak up, share your value, and you walk into a meeting and you go, I'm the right person for the job. Here's why. Theoretically, that's correct. But there are a number of people in the room who are going to turn and go mentally, who does
Who
she
she
think
thinks
she
she
is?
is.
There's this whole way. It's this song and dance. And I wish we didn't have to do it, but we still have to do a song and dance.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are enough of us who reach the highest levels of leadership, and if when we get there, we remember that the song and dance is not fair,
Mm-hmm.
nor is it necessary. And if we, from these positions of high leadership, that's why I talk about exceptionally accomplished women. That's why I focus so much on the highest levels of leadership. If the women once up there set a different standard, I am really confident that everybody, male, female, wherever you are on this gender spectrum, everybody will be fine with the switch. But we need enough people to get that,
That's right.
that tipping point.
It's so true. And, it is a lot of why I do what I do, because I have seen so many women reach that upper level and then act like their male counterparts. They were mentored by the men, and I understand that, but there is a different way, and you don't need to do that.
Right.
So you talked about the impact of companies that continue to fail to recognize, reward, and elevate women. Where are we getting it wrong, or where are they getting it wrong?
I had someone talk to me the other day. What was she saying she was doing? Women's health. This is something I'm really passionate about right now. Women's health and women's healthcare.
Yeah.
I am 47 in a few weeks. I am premenopausal. For anybody listening who's younger or a male, premenopausal doesn't just mean I'm not having my period regularly. I get hot flashes and I get angry. There are all kinds of changes that occur. Cognitive changes. There's anxiety. Probably the most crippling thing is the anxiety and the depression that can kick in. These things, 50% of the population will, unless they die before, will go through this process. Men go through andropause. There's not enough talk about men going through andropause, but women's healthcare is really poorly funded, right? So where are we getting it wrong? This woman was in a space of women's healthcare, and she was going to a meeting. She's a founder, and one of the gentlemen she spoke to said, "Oh, that's a really nice side business," or "That's a really niche business. That's a really nice niche business." And she looked at him. She goes, "It's 50% of the population. It's not a niche."
Yes.
Right? Nobody would say focusing on men's health is a niche business. It's not a niche. It's 50% of the population.
That's right.
So where are we going wrong? I think one of the places, actually, I hypothesize that one of the places we're going wrong is that a lot of companies still look at supporting senior leadership and leadership for women as a niche.
Yeah.
As simply a DEI thing, or simply a niche.
Oh, we need to have that percentage.
Right. They're 50% of the population. 50%. So there is this talent pool you are not getting access to. This talent pool, where when studies are being done on the impact of leadership from women, we're seeing a lot, like the data is out there. The business case has been made. Companies that have, I cannot remember the number right now because I'm a big picture person. That's why I keep that data somewhere when I need to use it. But, when you get, I think it's 30% or more women on boards or in senior leaderships, companies become more profitable.
Yeah.
In crises, companies that are led with women tend to get out of crisis mode faster, and they're more stable through crises. Women surpass men in 11 out of 12 EQ categories based on research. And we know that EQ, emotional intelligence, is fundamental to leadership because, again, we just said it's not the tactical piece. By the time you're in a leadership position, everybody has presumably the same level of knowledge, expertise, experience. It's your ability to, as my clients put it, I don't like this word, but navigate the politics. Whereas I like to talk about it, realize that humans are social animals. So navigate the social complexities of human interactions that will differentiate your ability to motivate, engage, calm down the people in your company, create a vision that they will be willing to follow.
Yeah.
So companies still think that, this is something that we pay attention to in March, that these are side initiatives. I think a lot of companies are still run by people who don't realize that this isn't just a bunch of women whining.
Yeah. Yeah.
And where we know that there's a huge cost is, first of all, what I just said, there's like a huge financial cost, but there's an opportunity cost. If we can put women in the room, they think about problems differently. I didn't say better, differently. And that different brings a new perspective. There's a whole market. Did you know that women make 80% of consumer good purchase decisions? Did you know that holds true for health decisions? 80% of healthcare decisions are made by women. So we're keeping out of the room the people who can give us the data and the information we need to know to understand people buy, purchase, and respond.
Yeah.
I'm left speechless. That is where we're
messing. And the thing that was frustrating for me as a project manager, because that was something we brought up over and over, but still they didn't do anything about it.
There are so many companies that say that they are data driven. There are so many companies that literally, like, their business is data, and they don't use data to make their decisions.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, because academia is the same way, right? So in academia, when I was a psychologist, and especially when I was working with children, there's a lot of research out there talking about optimal amounts of time you should put somebody in a classroom or learning experience, the absolute necessity for recess, and lots of recess. If you give a child recess before taking a test, you know that you can make up the gap that you see in testing scores between certain groups of children. So literally you can take a kid from a failing position to being successful just by giving them recess. We know judges make better decisions when they get full lunches and they get recess, right? And yet, have you ever been to an academic conference? They're like these 3-hour talks.
I know.
All these slides, and everybody's eyes are glazing, and the people are reading off. So they do all this research on how to learn, how people learn, how to teach, how to present information, and it's not integrated. So we see that all over the place. The data's there. People aren't responding to the data because people are human, and they think they're rational decision makers, but they're not. They're emotional decision makers. And as emotional decision makers, moving away from the status quo is uncomfortable, and humans don't like to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's right. But they have to grow. You have to.
They do.
Time is flying by, and there are some things that I still wanted to get to, so I will have to have you back again so we can talk about your 5-step process to transition, and also why you focus on elevating STEM and finance. So definitely have to have you back. Those that are watching, look for another segment that we'll have with Dr. Alessandra. But now I know that you guys that are listening really want to know how to connect with her. And so I'm going to share, as always, my contact information, or her contact information, on a slide. If you're listening, you know the drill. You should have been taking notes from the very beginning. If you didn't, run, get a paper and pencil. But everything will be on my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling. Please subscribe, as well as my findyourleadershipconfidence.com in the show notes. All right, if you're back from getting that paper and pencil, the website is noteworthyinc.co. That's noteworthyinc.co. In LinkedIn, you can find her by her name, Dr. Alessandra Wall. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Alessandra to talk to you about things that she has on her website that will be very helpful, some downloads she has, as well as what she typically puts out there on LinkedIn that might be of help to you as well. So it's all yours.
Very quickly, the best place to go on the website, there's a tab that says resources. And there are resources from a 3-step process to articulate your value. This is something that men can absolutely use. And I designed it for women very specifically. So it's probably one of the things I'm best known for. To an ebook I wrote on, it's called Back to Me, and it's about strategies that I've used from the time I was a psychologist to today with my clients to help us as humans slow down, process, become better decision makers, become less stressed and less anxious. There are resources on how to use LinkedIn to build social capital, which we all need in order to be successful. We don't do it on our own. It's who we know, what they know about us, how they feel about us, that dictates how successful we become, I would say, post mid-career.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to LinkedIn, I'll be honest, it's a mix of things. So every once in a while, there's a rant. Like I did a data rant. I was at a huge convention called Bio the other week, and somebody had asked me this question about how to convince their CFO to bring somebody like me in. And I said, the business case is made. Like, I don't understand your CFO. Just where else is the return on the dollar there for? I spend my days having conversations with exceptional women.
Mm-hmm.
And I will take the information from those conversations and write posts about them. Sometimes it's talking about what we deal with. Other times it's talking about how we overcome the things we deal with.
Mm-hmm.
What I find is women will come up to me and say, I follow you. What you write, that's my life. And I'm not trying to be an influencer. That's not what they have, no business behind that, but somebody needs to take these stories and put them out there. And that's a lot of what I do on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, I have just so much enjoyed this, and I definitely do want to have you come back and talk a little bit more about those things I mentioned. We could spend days talking, I think, about what we desire to do in our mission and making women truly empowered to become the change in the world that we need. And I work with children as well. And I think that I do that mostly because I want them to have a great foundation to become strong, exceptional women that are okay with leading whomever, male and female.
Yeah. I love it. It's always delightful, and it's really fun to talk to somebody who's been through it, right? Who knows from the other side what it feels like to do the climb, to succeed, and loved hearing you talk about getting to that place where you had ownership and confidence in what you brought to the table, and you're like, I'm just going to be me, and how much easier everything becomes when you can make that leap. There is a leap to make there, but
yeah, it's just a wonderful feeling. And you don't have to wait till you're 50. I'm 65 now and enjoying all those things that go with that, but still believe that it's my mission to help women to get to the other side, because it's a wonderful place to be. So thank you as always. And it's my reminder to everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.